Good morning and welcome to The Point. It is Monday, March 22nd, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV, channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9, and of course the viewers on Party Grenada and Go to Fet Facebook pages. Thank you so much for joining us on To The Point. It's a shortened program this morning because we are broadcasting the test match between Sri Lanka and West Indies. The broadcast starts at 15 minutes to 10, so we have just about 40 minutes or so for the program, so let's not stick and get into it. This morning I have joining me are two businessmen from the sister isle of Carriacou, Mr. Kim Mills and Mr. Leo Joseph. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hope everybody is doing well.
Well, so far so good. I want to thank you for inviting us on the program this morning and say good morning to our listeners as well. Because it's nice, dialoguing and getting information out there, especially in a media like this.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Thank you so much. I am seeing a Sheena Frank trying to enter the room. Is that one of you gentlemen?
No.
Okay, just checking. Just checking. All right. So let's talk. This morning we're discussing the relocation of the port on the sister isle of Carriacou from Hillsborough to Tyrrell Bay. And I know this has been an area of contention since the relocation took place, and people have been speaking about how it has been affecting them. So before we get into the effects of the relocation, let's first of all look at the reason behind the relocation and what was provided for the need to move the port.
Okay.
Well, if I should go first, well, Blossom, the movement of the port was happened quite secretly, and when it was done, we were given a reason for moving the port as the disrepair or the condition of the jetty in Hillsborough. And we later found out that was not so. So questions about the reason for moving the port started surfacing. And when we were not given any proper answer or some assurance as to what's going to be happening to the port of Hillsborough moving forward, we complained it to the powers of be, but to no end. And all we seem to be hearing is that the port has been moved from Hillsborough to Tyrrell Bay. Its rightful place in Hillsborough, most central to Carriacou, has been our port for 274 years, actually 275. And we couldn't find a good reason for the port being moved, not from a maritime point of view, not from the cost of it, not for the area that the port has been removed to. Question is, why? And delving it, we found out there seems to be other reasons we can probably get into later. So that is the point of contention.
Well, if I were to piggyback on that a little bit, I would say straight out, that there was no assessment done, period, as far as we do know, as to the conditions of the jetty and the impact it would have there. And even though the jetty was in disrepair, they're claiming, through the grapevine right now, as to the cost of maybe maintenance, repairs, or anything of the nature. That we don't have any information on that. So, right there and then now, the questions are still asked in the air, and we're still looking for answers as to what is the real reason for the relocation of the port.
And like Mr. Joseph said, you sought the answer from the powers that be to no avail. What sort of medium have you used to get those answers? Who have you gone to, and who you think holds the real answer in their hands or in their head?
Well, we really didn't want to violate protocol. So the first thing we did was to solicit some information from our representative. And Mrs. Stewart was called to a meeting with the business end of Carriacou, and we were told, we said to her that we were given a reason for moving the port, that the jetty is in disrepair. Well, what qualified the body? Do you have an engineering report that says the port is in disrepair? Yes. Can we see that report? No, you cannot see it. That's government property. And to me, that was not good enough an answer, because we won't just delve in for that information to be malicious. We want to be of some assistance, because the port in Hillsborough does mean a lot to us. So whatever we can do to assist, that would be the direction we want to go. But the answer we were given, you can have that information. And everything else, I even asked our good Prime Minister, friend, what is the status of the port? And the response is that I'll refer you to someone. It happens to be the General Manager for Port Authority. And his response is that, well, there is nothing to be done with Hillsborough, because whatever monies we have for port activities in Carriacou was expended in Tyrrell Bay. Mind you, our goodly minister is telling us now that we have plans for Hillsborough, that the existing jetty will be demolished and a smaller jetty will be built. So it depends on who you ask and what day of the week it is. So when you hear those kind of conflicting signals, it becomes worrisome to us. So we continue to raise the questions as to why the port was moved and in whose interest was that done. We will get into it a little deeper. Now we were told. I probably cut to the chase because we don't have enough time. We know that in 2004, our government, then Governor General Sir Danny Williams, leased 4.5 acres approximately to an entity called a CDC in Tyrrell Bay. That 4.5 acres of government lands was meant to be for the erection of a marina. Okay? Somewhere, and that marina was supposed to be open probably a couple of years later. But in 2013, instead of us having a marina, that same land that was leased to CDC became the site of a new port. So the question is CDC a vendor? Is CDC a lessee? Is CDC a land? We do not know. And as a result of the lands that were listed to CDC, used by our current port site, the adjoining lands, which it clearly stated in the list documents that those are private lands. That's what a copy of the list documents say. Was given to CDC. They said by our cabinet, couldn't quite figure out why or how. Now, 7.5 acres of private land. The owners of the land, quite understandably, were upset about it and took the matter to court. Well, of course, the government could not have been sued, so they sued the trespassing party, which is CDC. CDC saying now we're covered by the government. But CDC didn't prevail in court. The owners of the land was given the judgment. Now our government adjoined with CDC and appealed the decision by the High Court. Again, the appellate division said the lands are belonging to the rightful owners, which in this case, the Koreans. Now we're going further, we're told, and our government now is going to the Privy Council. As a matter of fact, the matter is already filed. So here we have not only that we could not understand how that leased property could be the site of a new port, and then people's land being taken by the government and given to this entity and being fought for in court. So it raises the question even further. What is the reason for moving the port from Hillsborough to Tyrrell Bay? You see, that is the burning issue, Gus, and actually that is a part of it. And you know, you can talk to just about anybody. It's not any matter of being anti-administration or anything like that. We are pro-Carriacou. We want to see the development of Carriacou. And you could ask anybody who has the slightest or the faintest idea of Carriacou. Hillsborough Port, the center of our commerce and everything else. That port is so centrally located. The entrance to the harbor is almost 3, if not 4 miles wide. So from a maritime point of view, you cannot compare. Talking about convenience, Hillsborough is centrally located, so the entire Carriacou would benefit from the location of the port. Now you move the port from a central location and bring it furthest point west. If you have an idea, the third of the three islands, Petite Martinique, is all the way to the north. So it becomes doubly, if not triply expensive for people of Petite Martinique, northeast central of Carriacou, to go to the new port. So here we have a new port situated in the center of a marina. You know what goes on in a marina? Yachts have been quarantined, sandblasting, all those good things. That's the site of your new and only port for the island of Carriacou. And some of us are being led to tell you what is happening and what is circulated in Carriacou. And I would like to say, because the CSA, where somebody in high position must have not only influence, but a share in the port. That is why all this is taking place. That's what Tom has to say. And looking at the circumstances and looking at the evidence is hard to defend that argument. So those of us who have businesses in Carriacou, those of us who belong to Carriacou and want to see Carriacou improve, are quite honestly irked. And if at all we would get some information from the right authority, we'll be quiet. But short of that, we're worried. And something else I should mention to you, is that it's widely rumored, and sometimes you wonder if there is some truth to it, that the movement of the port from Hillsborough to Tyrrell Bay was to facilitate an agreement with the government and some Chinese entity to have the Chinese develop the port of Hillsborough. If that ever happens, God help us, because we have no chance of getting that back. And when you look at Carriacou, in Dumfries, for example, we have a development there that nobody seems to have an answer about. All we're told is affordable housing. And it's a sort of a New York-style tenement. Some buildings 3-4 stories high. Carriacou is a place, if you have a little system, you depend on rainwater, crap will smoke you by. So not only is that development not suited for Carriacou people, culturally and otherwise, I couldn't see some people who of means going to live in those properties. Sanitation is a problem, electricity is a problem, water is a problem, but so it can be for Carriacou. So yes, it's all of the things that are of concern to us. So that's why we're up. And if at all, we'll get the information from a voice of authority, can discuss it, but nobody seems to be talking to us.
Well, but speaking about information, as a matter of fact, that is one thing we're not privy to, because as we were told in the beginning, when the 4.5 acres was leased to the developers, for the marina, and they were working with that, and then eventually, whatever happened down the line, we were told now that that is the area, that 4.5 acres that the port now use, and it was sold back to the port. As far as we understand now, we don't know if that is true, and as to the cost of that sale or whatever. So in other words, now we are wondering right now as to what really transpired, because information is not coming forth. And there's a lot of hearsay, they say, wherever the case might be, and it's not, it's not in our interest, because everyone is affected. And we all want to know exactly what's happening in our country, in our island. But that's not taking place. So this is one of the things that we're asking a lot of questions for. And the second thing is that we were told again that the new port facility in Tyrrell Bay, as to the cost of it, could be in the region of maybe some $19 million. We don't know if that is true. But if that is the case, based on what we do know about Hillsborough, that money could have been used to refurbish, or maybe a maintenance, or maybe even install a new jetty in the town of Hillsborough for much less than that. So this is one of the things, again, that we're asking questions that we don't get many answers. And it's very troublesome. It's
even with the concerns that you've had, it's been 2.5 years since the relocation. According to my memory, that was in October 2018 when it was commissioned and it started to be used. Have you seen any benefits so far from the relocation? Because that was one of the things the authorities said when it was newly commissioned, that, you know, change is hard, and once we start to adapt, then the businessmen, Carriacouians, PT Martinicans would start to see the benefits. 2.5 years later, are we seeing benefits of the relocation?
Well, benefits is a word I don't think they should even use that word benefits, because there has been no benefits ever since. Because what has happened, as we sometimes say, and not jokingly, but it's a serious fact, that Hillsborough has become a ghost town. Ghost town meaning there's very little or no activities at all. Because if we know and we do studies, we realize that the port is the nucleus of any country for development. It is. Wherever the port is where businesses will congregate, is where population. If you look at any country, you realize that in the area where there's a port is densely populated than any other rural areas, as they would call them. So which means now that we know with the effects of that, they know it's trickling down, and not only to businessmen. We are businessmen and we're speaking, but almost the entire, I should say, island of Carriacou and PT Martinique has been affected. So we should not use any word as benefits. Benefits is clearly out. If there is benefits, it might be in a case where a few are benefiting, but not a few out of a population of 7,000 approximately is not in the interest of the people. So let's leave out the word of benefits. We shouldn't use that word benefits on our program as we're going through this morning. Let's look at the effects that it has had on the entire community.
And if I may add, Blossom, kudos to what you just said, because that is so very true. Because if we were talking about a port and benefit to Carriacou, it should be either doing so from a marine point of view, from a convenience point of view, because a port is a port, and to make it the only port of entry for Carriacou. Tyrrell Bay is a little yacht haven with basically a reef in the middle of the entrance. The entrance to Tyrrell Bay is a couple hundred yards wide. So if we're talking about development for the future, Tyrrell Bay is not the spot for it. You've left Hillsborough, where your approach is between the islands of Sandy Island and Jacadam. You have 3 to 4 miles of white, royal blue water, deep waters, so you could accommodate any size of ship in Hillsborough. You cannot do that in Tyrrell Bay. At the moment, sometimes we have the Dolly Sea, who is docking in Tyrrell Bay. Very shallow draft. And depends on the tide. If they're not careful, they touch, and they tell you that all the time. So if little Dolly Sea is now having a problem, sometimes docking because the water is so shallow, what makes you think that will be beneficial to us as a port? None the like. You're talking about the cost of it. What could $19 million on to Carriacou? When things are to be done in Carriacou, it takes forever and a day. When you cry for milk, you get a pacifier. It never happens. The only thing that was done post-haste is the port. And overnight, I would add that if you're going to be doing anything that is good for the people, it brings you political mileage, so it should be widely advertised. Open the shirt and beat your chest because you're doing good for the people. But anything that is being done in secret and at night, in Carriacou, we call it bubble. Carriacou, we call it bubble. Something is wrong. Mm-hmm. So that is the end of it. We could see no benefit from that. For, as Mr. Mills just said, it may be a benefit to a few, but not the majority.
And as you just mentioned, Leo, just a while ago, as to what the new port in Tyrrell Bay able to accommodate, because we've had problems in the past, and it still continues, whereby you would have like the tanker which delivers fuel to the Tyrrell Bay area would have to come there and cannot deliver fuel because of the draft. They just couldn't come into the harbor. Although they still stay outside, still they could not come into the harbor. They would have to go to Grenada. And in many instances, you'd have rationing of fuel in Carriacou because of a situation that develops like that. Even the cement boat, when it comes in Hillsborough, they never had a problem. But lately, we've had a couple of instances where the cement boat comes to Carriacou, cannot offload, have to go to Grenada, and then come back again with a lighter load, and maybe you would have a high tide or something of the nature where you'll be able to upload and stuff like that. So Tyrrell Bay, as Leo is saying, is not a port for commercial activity, period. It does not give us that thing. What is good for, as you mentioned there, is for yachts. But if you really want to develop tourism, and you have to have ships and all maybe containers coming into your port, Hillsborough is the ideal place because it can accommodate almost anything. But for some reason, they are not looking at that picture. And when you ask questions as to, the benefits, well, I don't even want to use the word. I should just take that off my dictionary right now in my mouth. But anyway, when you ask what the word you're getting from them is that beautiful port. Oh, it's a beautiful port. But beauty is not all of it. I mean, you need the services available for everybody to be using. And I definitely, when it comes to anything like that, even in normal, maybe a marriage or something like that, you don't look for a beautiful woman, look for a woman who would really do the work and
substance. But you see, again, the port is not just a building. Yes, we have a building. Indeed, it's a beautiful building, but doesn't make for a beautiful port. And if you ask me, the building is very well oversized. It was a case where we burnt a church to Rosacon because, and it's just there sitting there 9 times out of 10, or even a 10 out of 10, quarter full. So the point is, did we need that size building? And if so, for what and when? Any Carriacouans are seafaring folks. You can ask just about anybody. And I don't want to say Carriacouans, I'm talking about Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Yeah? Carriacou and Petite Martinique. You could ask any sea person, any one of the guys who go tuna catching or who knows the flying the trade throughout the islands. Question them on the ports of Hillsborough and Carriacou. And I'm going to use the word benefits now. And which one has the greater benefit? And then you'll be told with nothing that Hillsborough is where the port should be. The port didn't move from Hillsborough to Tyrrell Bay to enhance Carriacou economically, culturally, marine-wise. No such thing. The question is why? And at that cost. And, I hope you understand what I'm talking about. Because if in fact, I was all for the marina for Carriacou is not a bad idea at all. So if you list, and that list, mind you, became effective in 2004, and to build a marina, and 2013, without any warning or excuse, what was supposed to be the marina that we listed to this entity for 66 years at $30,000 a year became the site of the port. Question is, what's going on there? Is CDC a lessee? Or lesser, a vendor? I don't know. We don't know. So there's too many things that are happening that we have no answers for. And when these things happen, we become antsy and jumpy because we care about Carriacou and we want to see Carriacou, a beautiful little island, remain Carriacou for Carriacouans. So that is our concern and that is our gripe. And those who want to tell you that the port of Tyrrell Bay is a benefit to Carriacou, or is a greater benefit to Carriacou, I respectfully differ.
Well, clarify something for me then, because one of the reasons given for the need to relocate the port was the safety at Hillsborough, that it was in a state of disrepair. But I believe I have heard that there are students that are still using that Hillsborough port to disembark, to get off and get on to school from Petite Martinique. Did I hear right? And somebody on Facebook also pointed out the same thing. Are some of our students still using that unsafe port?
Well, that is true, Blossom. I could tell you that is true because, and
as we speak,
but this is one of the things I've been questioning, in that why, if the port is that bad and it's in disrepair and it's dangerous and it's a time bomb and they use all kind of words there, why are they putting the lives of the nation's children in danger on a daily basis? That is questionable, because if forbid, something happens, God forbid, and as they are claiming, this jetty could collapse at any time, and you were to have a fatal accident in the harbor there, what are they going to be telling the parents, and what are they going to be telling the nation? They will not be able to answer any questions. So my belief, based on what is going on there, like I'm saying, the reason for the movement is not genuine as far as I'm concerned. It is because of some other reasons, which we're still looking for the answers. And the jetty is still being used by fisheries to deliver ice to some of the tuna boats and things like that. They deliver water to some of the yachties. And whenever it's still being used. Now, why are they doing that if the jetty in Hillsborough is in that bad condition? Maybe it needs some maintenance. I would agree on that, because since it's been built in the early 1990s, no maintenance has been done on that jetty as yet. So maybe this is cause for them to look at that. And I'm sure maintenance, and based on the figures we've been hearing for the new port, the new facility, wouldn't cost anywhere in the region of some $19 million, obviously. So what your Facebook is true.
To be exact, the last time anything was done to an existing jetty in Hillsborough is 1995. And you're dealing with metal and salt. Some of the columns, yes, are eroded. But the urgency and this immediate failure that we're talking about doesn't exist, because prior to the closing of the jetty, 3 weeks earlier, we were offloading cement on the jetty, and trucks hauling more than 5 tons was going to and fro. So
let me correct you. Let me correct you on that there. As you just mentioned about the Saturday before the movement, and I'm telling you because I'm very close to the jetty. The Saturday before the jetty was closed, for the movement to Abbeville, the cement boat was offloading. And we had trucks taking over 10, 12, 16 slings of cement at a time on that jetty. And other trucks taking 2 and 3 and 4, whatever they're able to carry at a time. So my thing is, less than 24 hours later, we say we're in imminent danger and we cannot use it anymore. And the next thing is that ever since they came up with the idea of the relocation of the port has been used without any restrictions at all. Whatever the case might be, it was being used. So I want to believe that the story of the movement is a lie. That's my opinion.
So yes, that is it.
In a motor beside the pestle?
Well, I think you're getting some of the answers. Something in the matter besides the pestle. And this is what we're trying to find out, because it's not real. It should not happen. We should not be given this kind of a runaround and all this information hidden from us, because, we are Carriacouans. It's in our interest. And the port has been there for the last 274 years. Hillsborough has been the port, and our foreparents, grandparents, and those beyond would have seen that the only place in the island of Carriacou appropriate for building a port. I don't know how they decided that, because the technology we have today, they didn't have that. But for some reason, they made the right...
The common sense.
And common sense prevailed.
The common sense existed then, as it probably doesn't exist today. But you see, oh boy. Now, we're not only talking about that, but then when as I mentioned, nothing in Carriacou gets done in a hurry, You're lucky if after a 10-year or 5-year promise, the promise is fulfilled or kept, then you're lucky. But the port happened to modernize. It was the most efficient move and construction that I've seen overnight. And the trouble is, I can't, for the life of me, if our government knows, because we're the ones who gave the list, I have a copy of the list before me. And the list is telling you that the myths and boundaries of the lands that you've been listed to you and that you're occupying, you're bounded by private lands. But then you just arbitrarily give that private lands to CDC. And our government is involved in fighting the owners of the land, as determined by the documents and the High Court of Grenada. Now we're going to the Privy Council, costing over $50,000 US for an application, as per the defendants. So the High Court tell you the land is not yours. The Appellate Division tell you the land is not yours. We're going to the Privy Council to fight the owners of the land for the land, so that you could facilitate CDC, to whom you list the lands for the port. If that makes sense to you, to God be the glory.
And
Doesn't to me.
at whose expense? That's another question you have to ask.
Mine and yours, taxpayers.
That's it.
Let's go to our viewers and listeners who may have questions in relation to the port relocation. Landline number 435-2041. WhatsApp number is also 435-2041. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. You can also post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on Facebook and YouTube. Let me go to a WhatsApp question. Somebody is asking, do you gentlemen know if there was any environmental impact assessment done at Tyrrell Bay? Next thing, there's another situation like the Sates Breakwater project. Do you know if any was done?
No.
Well, no, as far as we do know, there was none. And there's no records that we've been asking for something of the nature, and there was no environmental study done. And not even that too. But the problem too, when they almost finishing the project there, is that we had a problem with flooding in the area. And if an environmental study was done, that would have been taken into consideration, because they try to do a quick fix now to solve the problem, but still it has not been solved 100% as yet.
But I can assure you, in addition to that, Blossom, physical planning approval. You see, if physical planning approval was done and it would have been given, where the port is located at the base of lands, and there's all of the waters coming down from the hills. It terminates in the port side. But when the reclamation was done and you built up a height, they created a lake. So no provisions was made for drainage. It's only after complaining time and time again that the proprietors of the marina see it necessary to put a drain in there, because all that was created in a lake, and at a time when it was subjected to dengue fever, water accumulation throughout the road. So all that, it was not done. And not only the water is not being drained, Carriacou has a peculiar form of oysters. Well, that is gone, never to be regained, because all the mangroves leading to the oyster beds, all that is being affected. So there is no need. The need of CDC or whoever the proprietors of the marinas are exceeded that of any Carriacouan per person or Carriacou's island interest.
Let me go to the landline. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, my dear ladies and gentlemen from Carriacou. Now, the big problem is from one port to the next port with a big shed, it's half empty. But the bill I read in any case, we have empty shed go one day, when Carriacou develop in any case, it go full up in any case, just time in any case. But what the government is doing is to build a modern port in Hillsborough, or let passengers stay up in Hillsborough and let cargo ship go down there. But if the tide low, so as going in another country, tide low, you have to catch the tide. That is problem. So you build a modern port in Hillsborough, and space to have a nice warehouse in any case, and think and cover for jeep for our spray or shelter for our spray when you come with the passengers. We just go shelter the rain and whatnot.
Okay.
It's time the modernize Carriacou, but the big shed was down, or the build down by the pool down there, you go full up one day when Carriacou develop.
Thank you very much. Could that be an alternative, gentlemen? Having both
Sounds
Bay
good.
and Hillsborough?
Sounds good. And as a matter of fact, if there's going to be Hillsborough and Tyrrell Bay could be the second port, not our only one and only port of entry for the island of Carriacou.
What alternatives, that brings me to the next question, what alternatives can be put into place going forward? Because with the port relocation, the concerns still are around 2.5 years later. What can be done now to make most people happy? You can't make everybody happy, but most people happy, most Carriacouians and Petit Martinicans.
Well, let's remember that the Hillsborough has been the economic activity, business activity from ever since. And people having to access the port in Tyrrell Bay, like customs and other services that you offer down there, it's a big disadvantage and very costly. It's become a problem now where people have to spend extra to get services. So in other words, now we have a situation where you have the head one way and the tail one way. Put the two of them together, or put one, where like those in the case with Hillsborough, which is the central place, because all the activities taking place in Hillsborough anyway. So all they need to do is get back to the drawing board and reconsider their decision and put a port back in Hillsborough. Then you're gonna it's gonna be a plus all around, because you're gonna have fuel base still being used, and which is ideal for yachts. And then you're gonna have all the commercial traffic taking place in the town of Hillsborough, and Hillsborough could accommodate any deep water harbor. Once they want to do the investment, it's gonna be ideal. So this is one of the things that they could look at right now, bringing back the facility, bringing back the use of a port and the traffic back to Hillsborough, rather than having it like a ghost town, and everybody is dislocated right now. Petermatnick suffering just the same, because Petermatnick people have to come into the Windward area because they're not allowing some of the boats to come into Hillsborough still. For whatever reason, I don't know, because they're allowing students to come, but they're not allowing regular passengers to come with the boats and things like that. And they have to pay double. To get to the services in Hillsborough, they pay from Petermatnick to Windward, Windward to Hillsborough, and then if they have to go to a Tewell Bay, they have to pay another one again. So you talk about 3 fares as compared to 1 in the regional in the beginning. And this is a burden again and additional expenses for the people. So the ideal thing, which our forefathers and grandparents before put the port in Hillsborough, bring it back. That's all they need to do. And dialogue with the people. And let us get some answers too, because a lot of questions are still being unanswered. And it's very disturbing.
You see, Blossom, I guess that you keep mentioning, and quite rightly so, that the port has been there for 2.5 years now, and one is wondering why the question probably wasn't raised earlier. This is what happens when things are done in Carriacou without consultation. And when things are happening in Carriacou, it's already in motion. So you look and wonder what's happening. And when you say, well, why was it done? Well, it's done already. The fact of the matter, why was it done? So what are you going to do with Hillsborough? And the suggestion coming from a good representative, we could paint some street signs, paint the buildings and to make Hillsborough.
As it goes.
Yeah. So you're wondering, what's happening? Why was that done in the first place? Why did you move the port? Why didn't you consult people of Carriacou who knows something about Carriacou and the ports and how they affect Carriacou? You didn't do that. You just impose your will on Carriacou and then saying it's a good thing for Carriacou. Says who?
But not only a good thing, the ministers is saying it's a done deal.
It's a done deal, so then you guys have no recourse.
That's it.
See, the kind of disrespect.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom.
Morning.
How are you today?
I'm good.
All right. Welcome to the panel on the ground there.
Yes,
before, it used to be St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, right? No, it's St. Kitts and Nevis. Carriacou could call for independence and go on their own. You understand? It's time for the call for independence and go on their own. They're big enough to handle their own affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. I guess this is kind of bringing in the local government discussion.
Forget it. I don't go there, Blossom. We need another program. That local government was promised since 1974, and it yet cannot be in effect. You know why? Because having a local government will get the opinion of other people who you deem are not your supporters, and that's it's so foolish and so childish, because everybody, the dumbest of us, have something to offer. So if with the if you consult everybody, it doesn't necessarily have to be who you think is your supporter or not. And a lot of the so-called supporters are, in my view, supportees. And they just making things worse for all of us in Carriacou. So, we could do that, no problem.
Gentlemen, what needs to happen now? What needs to happen now for most Carriacouians and Petermatnickans, and by extension, people on the mainland, to be happy, to be comfortable?
Firstly, a meeting of the minds with the powers that be and the people of Carriacou who are affected by the movement of the port. If I don't think that again, I speak to the highest of the law, and nobody has heard from us what our beefs are. So first, let's establish some dialogue, and probably might be able to offer some suggestions. But you do what you did and just saying, don't deal, keep just taking your pipe and smoke it, and then you put a tight lid. That is not good enough. So firstly, let us establish a dialogue and we take it from there.
Mr. Mills, what do you think needs to happen now as we prepare to close out the program? I can't believe that.
Just like Mr. Joseph just said, the first thing is to establish some communication line, because it's important, because they're not sitting with us to hear our side of it, and without dialogue, you cannot move things forward. So if we sit there at the table and we explain and they listen to the concerns and everything like that that's taken place, then they will be able to come to a conclusion where everybody might be happy at the end of the day. But right now, nothing of the nature is going on. We've been trying to access every possible way, every avenue to get information out. And even the last time when we had a talk with our minister, and that was about 8-9 months ago, I think it was maybe October of last year or whatever, I don't remember the exact time, and never got back to us as to, what would be the way forward, or maybe schedule another meeting with high authorities or the port people that are concerned. And then we are not hearing anything but negatives coming from the public side of it. So we need to sit down first now because of the situation and talk it over, and then we'll be able to move forward. Because if we don't do that, we're not going to get anywhere. And I think that's where the dialogue should start.
We were told that a committee was formed to look into the Hillsborough issue. That committee that was formed seemed to be non-existent. I do not know. Nobody's able to tell you who are the members of the committee, where the committee is. Carriacou ain't that big. But there's a committee that was formed, I know, somebody's bedroom somewhere, but not for those of us who represent the business sector of Carriacou. So as of now, we have nothing going on towards doing something about Hillsborough. And that is our concern. I shouldn't say nothing except probably, if the rumor is true, the Chinese won't be developing it. And it's the last thing that we would like to see happen, because it should be for Carriacouans, not for any foreigners.
Somebody on Facebook is asking, what is the relationship between the business community and the Minister of Carriacou and PG Martinique Affairs?
Well, if I were to answer that, I mean, it's embarrassing to say that I don't know of any relationship that's taken place, because I would imagine that our minister should be intact with the business community. And as Leo just mentioned, if there's a committee, as they're claiming, that was formed, it's obvious that the business community would have been involved in that committee. I mean, the business, sector, but nothing of the nature is, to my knowledge, is making. So right now, it's like, anything happens any day.
Blossom, for me as a business person, let me say this to you. I am open as the Atlantic Ocean to any discussion with anybody. And I've said so publicly, privately. I've said so to our minister. Anything you want to discuss, anything that you need, I'm at your beck and call. So whoever want to put you in corners as, you by this or that or the other, which is not true. Talk to your people, and those who sometimes think are sinners are those who belong in your choir. But if you only want to sing to your choir, that's all you're going to get. You'll be doing the same thing, wrong thing over and over and getting the same results. Put it this way, I don't think that anybody in the business community in Carriacou is adverse to the minister or can even have a sit down with the minister. So the minister being the representative has to be the bigger person. You can't be thin skin if you're going in politics. And calling the so-called sinners, let us have a discussion. Let us get somewhere. We're open, we're free and open anytime, any day, any venue. I am ready.
So am I.
Hopefully, gentlemen, the powers that be are listening. Your concerns can be addressed at soonest, and your call and need for more communication, hopefully it would be heard and answered, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yes. Blossom, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks
for having us.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being our guest this morning. Appreciate it so much. And of course, we'll continue to keep in touch as the days and months and weeks progress to see if there's at least a little bit benefit. I'm going to use it, Mr. Mills. Benefit for the people of Carriacou and PG Martinique. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us this morning. And anytime you need me, whatever the case might be, I'm ready, willing, and able. Okay.
Grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again.
All right.
You too, my dear. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Two businessmen from the sister Isle of Carriacou, Mr. Kim Mills and Mr. Leo Joseph. We thank them so much for being our guest on To The Point this morning. Like I said, it's a shortened program as we prepare for the broadcast of day 2 of the first test between West Indies and Sri Lanka. The pre-game commentary is starting in a short while. So we're going to take a break. We're going to end To The Point program and end my time with you for today as we prepare for the broadcast of the game. Have yourselves a safe and productive Monday. To all the folks that tuned into the program, appreciate your listenership, your viewership, and your time. It is always a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day. Continue to be COVID-19 smart. Have yourselves a good one.